How's it going, guys? My name's Barry, this is No Bolts Left Behind, and today I have a brand new project car. So I just got on the highway leaving San Diego and I just bought myself a Mustang. It's a 1968 coupe, inline six, though I'm not sure all six are firing because this thing is really hard to get up to freeway speeds. I have about 100 miles to go to get back to Long Beach, and I don't really have a good way to tow this thing, so let's hope she makes it. All right, so we've been on the freeway for about 10 minutes. So far, so good. Engine temperature's holding strong. Voltage seems okay, I guess. Seems to be burning a lot of gas. Oil pressure is somewhat pressurized. The brakes are not good. I think there's something wrong with them. Otherwise, this thing is a really fun car to drive. I'll check back in a little while. So I've been driving for about an hour now, and I think I'm about halfway home. I got about an hour to go, and I love this thing. Windows down, quarter window popped, cruising up the coast in the 68 Mustang. Awesome. So if you're wondering why I got a Mustang in the first place, I don't really have a good reason other than my favorite movie car of all time is the 68 Mustang. Of course, Steve McQueen's green fastback from the movie Bullet. Obviously, 68 fastbacks are very expensive, but they do make kits to convert coupes to fastbacks. Just need an angle grinder, a welder, and a little bit of courage. The first step on this thing is to get it running better, driving better, and we'll go from there. All right, we made it back to the garage. Let's check this thing out. This is a 1968 Ford Mustang. It's a straight six automatic notchback Mustang, but the one truly rare feature this car has is it has almost no rust. This is a very straight California car. I traced the original sale location back to Phoenix, Arizona. And from what I can tell, this car spent a lot of its life, or maybe all of its life, here in the Southwest United States, where it's always like it is today. Very dry, very hot, and very good for keeping classic cars in really good rust-free condition. It's definitely seen some pretty good wear and tear in its very long life that it's had, and it definitely has a lot of problems that need to be fixed. But whenever you buy a project car, especially one like this, you gotta kind of think of it like a blank canvas. Don't worry about the motor that's in it now. You have to think about what motor it could have in the future. I think the first phase of this project is just gonna be to bring it back to life, make it a good, reliable driver. I still do have my Challenger, of course, so that's definitely still my go-to fast muscle car to, you know, race on the drag strip. And my daily driver is my Nissan 300ZX, which is my medium fast car for driving in the canyons and road racing and things like that. But I always love these first-gen Mustangs. They're small, they're light. In my opinion, they have one of the coolest interiors in the business. They're just kind of cool cruisers for like Pacific Coast Highway, Southern California driving. I won't call it an efficient car, but I'm gonna see how much gas mileage I can get out of the straight six. I don't think you can call any car from the 60s an efficient car, but if there's one car that might be able to do it, considering how light this guy is, and maybe if we add some modern tech, we can get it to drive a little bit more like a modern car and maybe get a little bit better gas mileage out of it too. All right, so I'll take you around this car. I'm gonna go over everything that's wrong with it. And like with all my builds, I am kind of winging it, but I do have some plans for this guy. So I'll give you an idea as to what I have planned for, I guess, for the somewhat near future. All right, so first things first, a lot like my 300ZX, it kind of feels like somebody was sort of midway through a project on this car and kind of just gave up and sold it. But there's definitely something wrong with the way this thing runs. It idles very high, And it does go from about 0 to 40 miles an hour, somewhat okay, but from 40 to 60 or 65, like you're merging on the freeway, it takes maybe like 60 seconds. Maybe the engine's not quite running on all 6 cylinders, or maybe the carburetor tune is way off. The guy did warn me that he messed with the distributor and he did not have a timing light. So he said he turned to the distributor to advance the timing a little bit to get better gas mileage. I don't know if that's true or not, but well, I'm sure he did turn the distributor. Whether or not it was to try and get better gas mileage, I don't know. But that will definitely need to be addressed. The other problem is the brakes. This thing has all 4 drum brakes and a non-power brake booster. And not only that, I'm pretty sure there's something wrong with the brakes too, because it's almost like to get this thing to stop, I needed to use both feet on the pedal. You have to push super, super hard. Even when you're stopped and the car's in gear, it's kind of hard to keep it from rolling forward. So that's definitely the worst part about this car. And my plan, of course, is to add a brake booster and convert it over to disc brakes. Here's another weird one. The door does not seem to stay latched. That's definitely really, really sketchy. Looks like we're missing actually most of the bolts here, 2 of the 3. And this thing seems like it's broken. Maybe it can be repaired, but obviously it's not ideal to have your door swing open unexpectedly. So that's gonna be a day 1 fix as well. The interior in this thing's actually pretty nice. The seats were obviously redone very recently. It does have new carpet, and it seems like the dashboard is pretty well put together. There's obviously just some general looseness with everything, so this will definitely need a good once over, and it does seem to be missing the dash pad as well. But man, look at those gauges. I've always loved these like super 60s gauges on this guy, the dual gauges and then the 3 up top. Overall, the body and the paint is not really that great, but I think okay. I think good enough for a daily driver. I've always meant to practice my painting skills, and I think this probably would be a pretty good car to do it on. It seems like I'm missing a few trim pieces, just here and there. There's definitely something missing here. Maybe something around the headlights. Obviously the antenna is kind of just sitting there. That's really strange. The door handles definitely need to be replaced. I'm pretty sure I'm missing some sort of trim around here. And I know there's supposed to be more emblems on this car. I want to say there's supposed to be some sort of like Mustang somewhere in this area, maybe on the back as well. So I'll have to do some Googling to figure out what the correct badging is for this guy and see if we can get it back to factory. All right, well, that's the easy stuff. Now let's take a look at the real problem. Behold the mighty 200 cubic inch inline Ford 6. Now, from my research, people say that this is actually a very reliable engine. It doesn't make a lot of power. We're talking like maybe 120 or somewhere around there horsepower. But right off the bat, I'm really actually kind of excited to see how simple this thing is. I've been used to working on my Nissan 300ZX V6 engine, and I think that this is the exact opposite type of engine to work on. I don't know if I've ever seen an engine to engine bay ratio quite like this one. I think you could probably fit 2 of these guys side by side if you really wanted to. I feel like that was actually part of the reason, maybe subconsciously, I bought this car, because I needed my next project to be an easy engine that I could crawl into the engine bay and work on. Right off the bat, this doesn't really seem like it's on there quite right. I'm wondering if this is even the correct air cleaner for this guy. The carburetor does look to be in okay condition, but you know, I'm actually not 100% sure I'm gonna keep that carburetor. I'm definitely not a carburetor tuner, so I foresee some computer control in this general area in the very near future. I'm not sure if I'm even gonna try and bother doing like rejetting or like, you know, turning idle screws or whatever normal people do with carburetors. The wiring on this thing is definitely very, very sketchy. Everything is pretty crispy, and it seems like these wires are pretty much all broken off, and we got power wires kind of just hanging out, resting up against the engine bay. Really thick gauge power wires going into random holes in the firewall, and that's definitely not something you want. So rewiring this thing and properly shielding this stuff better than stock is definitely one of the first projects I want to do on this thing as well. There's an obvious exhaust leak here. This actually, I didn't realize how loose this thing was. That's actually, it kind of seems like they just didn't tighten that thing. So that explains the massive amount of fumes I was getting hit with when I was driving this thing home. Hopefully that should be an easy fix. There's definitely a lot of like sketchy welding down there. probably try and weld some new pipes in there. And I've actually heard these i6 engines running with dual exhaust, and they sound actually pretty good. The battery tie down seems to be just this small chain of zip ties kind of holding it, I don't know, against the radiator support here. I think I should probably get a battery tray for this guy. In fact, the whole unit is kind of, oh my gosh, it's like the battery tray is not bolted down either. And I'm sure not lastly, but definitely last of all of the very obvious things that are wrong here, is that this engine does leak a good amount of oil, and it doesn't seem to be coming from anywhere up top, like valve cover or even the cylinder head. So that makes me think like it's either oil pan or maybe it's the rear main seal. You know, I have so much room to work in there. I can get to those transmission bolts right here from the top. I feel like I can just pull the transmission back in like 20 minutes and replace that seal. So really not that big of a deal. But it definitely is marking its territory here on my garage floor. So something will have to be done about that for sure. As per usual with any like neglected 60s or 70s cars, the suspension, the shocks, all of that stuff feels really pretty blown out. So I think this thing's due for a fresh set of like bushings and ball joints, and definitely shocks, possibly springs as well. The steering is, you know, not the worst that I've driven. Definitely very vague though. So actually, you know, I haven't taken a look at the front shocks or springs. It looks old. Kind of hard to say if they're still working. The rear shocks look really pretty old. And that's pretty much it. Or at least that's all of the obvious things that need to be fixed. I'm sure I'm going to uncover plenty of things along the way. These things are always full of surprises. But I'm pretty excited to work on this car. I've always loved the first gen Mustangs. It's definitely one of those like iconic American cars. And I'm excited to modernize this thing. So stay tuned. I'll be jumping on this thing right away. I'm going to go order a bunch of parts. Make sure to subscribe so you can stay up to date on this build. We'll see you next time.